Good afternoon to my fellow panelists, Ishsa Roy ma'am, then Unnikrishnan sir, Sajid sir, and also to the other officials and the delegates and other startups who are present here today. We have been given a very interesting topic for discussion. It's Industry Academy, Innovation Entrepreneurship Collaborations, how startups can fill the dots. In fact, just a few introductory speech about myself. I am from the State Services, AP Government. Done my Masters and MPhil from JNU New Delhi. Then I joined the State Services. Before that, I worked as consultant for a few World Bank projects in Delhi. Then last year, before taking up this CEO position, which is part of the IT department, Government of AP, I was OSD in Chief Minister's Office, Government of Andhra Pradesh. I'm very happy that I'm part of this event. When CEO Kusum, who is my counterpart, called up and said that he can be part of this, I really like to see and explore what we can learn from this and then emulate similar kind of things in AP as well. In fact, after AP got divided from Telangana, you are aware that we had divided in 2014. We are trying to play catch up with Telangana. So we are going that far. And coming to the topic, it's interesting that industry and academia have to do the collaborating part. You look at the recent rankings in the Global Innovation Index, 2023, which has come up very recently. India stands at 48th position, and Switzerland is number one again for the 13th time. Why? Because the Switzerland's academic excellences are too good, and the research institutes are very, very well established. And recently we had Niti Aayog workshop at Bangalore. CEO Niti Aayog was present, ma'am. In fact, Sir Unnikrishnan sir was also there with us in that workshop. That mandate was to take India to 25th position by the Honorable PM Garu. So the interesting part is that unless if you don't collaborate and then industry doesn't come along with the academia and play the real game changer, then only we'd be in a position to take it forward. Startups, of course, have to play that filling the dots gap because today it's an age of disruption and startups have to be the really transformative agencies who can do that kind of change. With this, I'd like to request my fellow panelists to introduce a bit about themselves and about the topic. Then we'll slowly get into the theme. First, I request Ishsa ma'am to talk a few minutes.
So, a very good afternoon to all of you. This is a very big opportunity and a matter of privilege and pride for all of us to be here in the 5th session of Huddle and to be amongst a panel of very eminent people here. Feel very happy and equally happy to be sharing and learning from each one of you. Well, as I think he said in the beginning that the Global Innovation Index is out and India is somewhere in the middle, as he said, amongst the 132 countries. But if one were to look at the environment that we have in the space of startups, innovation and entrepreneurship, Kerala is somewhere not that bad. So, in fact, in many ways, if one were to look at the startup ecosystem, Kerala is amongst the leaders in India. And I'm sure with the encouragement which the government is giving and the focus which the government is bestowing to this sector, it will be soon amongst at least the top 2 of our country. If one were to look at the higher education space, well, apart from it, I think we are living in very challenging times, exciting times as well. Challenging because, as we all know, there's a global recession looming large, and then there is a volatility of the markets. So given this kind of a situation, I think the entire ecosystem has no other option but to collaborate. So the academia, the industry, and the companies, the startup companies, all of us have to come together. It's a need of the hour. And none of this is a monolith in itself. Government in itself is not a monolith. Government is there to create an ecosystem. So as far as the startup initiatives are concerned, well, you have, as a part of this knowledge economy, knowledge society, the focus on it, you have very eminent people to speak on. But I thought I'll take this opportunity of sharing some of the government's prerogatives, the government of Kerala's focuses, the larger focus that Kerala has given to this sector. So one of the things that has been started very lately, again with the assistance of both focused funds at the disposal of the state government, is something called translational research. So this translational research in our laboratories was something which was losing its focus in some ways, and it is only this year that the government has decided that we will take it up in a very major manner in some of our universities. So the translational research focus with the domain expertise that our professors and scientists have been divided into 5 major universities of Kerala, MG, Calicut, Kannur, and of course CUSAT. The idea, of course, is to look at what kind of research is required based on the demands which come from the industry, because the idea is not to create smart products. Can you hear now? The idea is not to create smart products alone, because smart products will not have an impact unless and until they are market fit, unless and until they are creative, unless and until they are innovative, unless and until they lead to an entrepreneurship build up in the society. So the translational research that we are talking about in the universities, which are going to kickstart, will be one of this kind. The second thing that the government of Kerala wants to do and has focused its mind on is to bring in an element of risk fund for the translational research. Now this is something which is very new in this ecosystem. We know that whenever one engages in research, there's always a risk factor involved in it. So how do you define risk? When does risk actually kickstart? And how do you offset the risk by ensuring that the impact which the translational research is designed to focus on is actually reachable? It reaches its goal, it reaches its milestone. So the risk fund analysis, again, has been, we built up a standard operating protocol and the guidelines, and the architect of few of, some of these protocols are sitting right here. Well, the idea is that it will not only underrate the risk and address the risk, but it will also be deployed, the fund will be deployed for capital as well as, human resources development. So it's an opportunity in that sense, it's a huge opportunity in that sense. And I think the foundations that we have, whether it's a US Research Foundation or our own country's research foundation, the way we are looking at the risk fund is a step ahead. It's an improvement on not only underwriting and identifying the risk and underwriting it and addressing it, but also building in human resources, capital investment in the product. The third thing that we are focusing on in a very large manner is something called, the focus at some of the very, very leading Ivy League universities are doing, and that is investing in PDFs, the postdoctoral fellows. Now, the postdoctoral fellows, last year onwards, has been started in the name of this, it's called the CM Navakerala Fellowships. And these Navakerala Fellowships is a fellowship in the cutting area of research and applied research, by the way, basic translated into applied research in the area of healthcare, education, nutrition, literature, art, science, society, history, everything that impacts our life. Now, the PDFs are given the maximum assistance that any other state has given it. It's almost 50,000 to a lakh per month, and then also contingencies. So this is one of the ways that we are looking at at empowering our PDFs and then tying them up with industry as well as the startups. And the fourth thing that, of course, we are doing is looking at our own research and educational facilities in terms of applied research. So how does that translate, and how does that have a smart collaboration with the startups is something that we are focusing on. I think I'll leave it at this and then invite.
Thank you, ma'am. Such an elaborative elucidation on the research front. In fact, we had looked at IPRs, and then we are way below the world mark. Today, US and China are leading, and then the intellectual property rights that they are creating through the research is what defines the quantum of economic output coming out of the research. Probably the topic is related to that, industry-academia collaborations, how the industry can drive and engage with the academia in making the research more relevant and more market-friendly. Now I invite Unnikrishnan sir, who happened to he took class for us in Niti Aayog series. In fact, it was very, very good, sir. Now I request Unnikrishnan sir to talk about knowledge mission and knowledge economy. Over to you.
Thank you. I mean, Dr. Ishida was talking about the initiatives which the government of Kerala has taken up in the areas of translational engineering and also building up, bringing in scholars who are working in various parts of the world to focus research on addressing some of the important research questions in the universities. This is in the innovation parlors, what we talk about as STI, Science Technology Based Innovation, which is basically a linear model for translating research, whether it is fundamental or basic research or applied research, into some products. This is extremely important in Kerala. We had been lacking in that because we don't have huge research infrastructure. The number of, even in spite of the fact that Kerala had an umbrella of science and technology institutions, which is quite unique, we don't have that sort of extensive R&D infrastructure in the state, leaving VSSC and CDAC and a few in such RGCB and Sri Chitra and a few such institutions. We don't have, compared to other states, we don't have a excellent R&D infrastructure. So it is extremely important that the higher education institutions transform the way they look at the productive activity and the market and the entrepreneurship, and then seriously look at research and also translating research into products and processes. We have an excellent startup ecosystem. Over the last 3-4 years, we had been, Dr. Saji had led the startup ecosystem to new heights, and we are continuing with the process. One of the good things about the startup ecosystem is that if you look at the the Technopark and the related companies, we find that if you look at the profile of the companies, because in my PhD work I had been looking at that, one of the important things that you look at is that the profile of the companies which are focusing on real IT and hardcore technology is more among the startups than among the among the Technopark companies, because most of them focus on ITS and lower end IT. So we have been able to make a dent. And we have, as a startup ecosystem, we have come up with pioneering, came up with the first startup policy. We came up with a number of pioneering schemes which other states are emulating. And definitely Kerala is in the lead. But when we look at the startup ecosystem as a whole, there are a number of weaknesses which is concerning. Number one is the number of deep tech startups had been less. So that is where this translational engineering thing and also the center of excellences in some of the new areas, be it nanotechnology, be it biotechnology, be it genomics, some of those cutting edge, what we call as industry 4.0 areas, I mean, we have to really go into some of those areas and promote startups which can actually work on linking the transnational research. That is one part of it. The second part of it, which is even more worrying, is that the focus of startups on public goods on the one hand, then the second one is in terms of the real life problems of Kerala society. The number of startups which focus on wicked problems of Kerala. Because Kerala, unlike other states, we are different from the Bimaru states in terms of the issues. The issues are completely different. So there is a need for us to start addressing in the context of Kerala's development, in the context of the transition to the knowledge society. There are a variety of deeper issues which are to be addressed. It's not it is not to be left to the startups alone. But my point is that, number one, when a startup is coming up, I mean, thanks to Saji, he had been extremely very clear that the focus has to be on market. I have no dispute on that. It is because of that that we have been able to build up the startup ecosystem. And then the next focus is how fast to become a unicorn. That's also good. I'm not saying that. But quite often, whether the impact, what is the sort of actual impact that can be made in the society? What is the type of real problems which can be addressed? We have to have an approach in which some of these real problems of development which Kerala faces, unlike the rest of the states, has to be addressed. And I think this is also extremely important to be addressed.
You rightfully said, sir, you had hit the nail on the coffin. In fact, through knowledge mission and knowledge economy, and also through creation of infrastructure alone, we can bridge the gap. Now I request Sajid sir to talk about Makers Village, how the transition happens from knowledge to the real world. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So I just wanted to look at the title and then come to Mega Village. The title is that industry and academia as two quadrants, innovation and entrepreneurship as another two quadrants, and then how startup can fill the dots. So in other words, we say that there is a dots between industry and academia. There is a dots between innovation and entrepreneurship, which is true. Now the question is whether startups can fill this or not. Now if you look at the startup movement in this country, right from 1980s onwards, at that point of time we never used to call us startups, but we used to call it as innovative enterprises and all. Due to the support of DST and others, we have incubators in colleges. But today, after around 40 years, we need to ask this question. How many of the successful startups, successful in many ways, through profit, through valuation, through impact, which Professor Unni said, how many of them have actually come from these incubators? And how many have come from outside that? And that actually is a big question we need to answer. In fact, we never asked this question that strongly, but we need to ask that question. Look at the 130 unicorns, 112 unicorns we have, how many of them have come from college ecosystem? Unfortunately, they have come through college, but not from the college incubators per se. So that, I think, at this point of time, we may have to actually start looking at it slightly differently. And like Madam rightly pointed out, the innovation actually happens in institutions. Research happens in institutions. Now, we all know that India is considered to be third largest as far as startup numbers is concerned. But in fact, impact-wise, the report says we are in 20 or 24, even lower than smaller countries like Sweden and Finland. So it is important for us to see how do you make our startups more impactful. Now, my point is that rather than looking at startups innovate, why don't we actually take the innovation which comes out of the research of the universities to the industry through the startups? It is easy said than done, because as we know, most of us in universities do research which in a technology readiness level may be 1 or 2, which is far, far away from commercialization. And here is the challenge. The challenge is that industry wants day one pluggable technology. What we produce in colleges through research papers or even to patents or even very erudite researchers, they may make it at TRL level 3 or 4 at max. So there is a gap from 4 to 9. How do we transit? This is basically where many of the institutions are starting thinking that startups can fill that dot. And that is basically where the startup model comes. But there is a risk here. The risk is that we all know that only 5 to 10% of such technologies will eventually make it to the market. 95% of that technologies research will not translate into commercial product as such. So who takes the risk of failure? And invariably, this is what has been borne by the many startups. If they are venture funded, okay, but they are not venture funded, it creates a big problem as such. So we may have to address that issue. In Kerala, we have done that to some extent. There is the state said that state can actually underwrite the risk if an industry or a startup comes and work with an university. So we, under Madam, translation research centers are now being built in various universities primarily to address that. So some of these measures need to be looked at a much, much larger scale, where we need to understand that innovation and entrepreneurship are two different things. An innovator or inventor is not a person who needs to actually take it to the market. There should be somebody else to do that. Expecting a person who do research to actually go and sell the product is actually not really wise, because he neither do research nor he will sell. So there we need to have a mechanism, and that mechanism is something which we need to work out. There are global models. Catapult to some extent is, we can speak about in UK ecosystem, which is trying to do. And we are trying to emulate part of that in our ecosystem also. But important thing is, all our universities have got such a rich amount of research. And the postdoctoral fellowships which Madam mentioned actually bring in more number of such output. If we can actually translate a small portion of that into the market, we can actually drive the economy really, really big. That's basically where maybe the research startups becomes an important thing. Startup Mission recently has tried a very innovative project with Mahatma Gandhi University, specifically to take up researchers and connect them to see how do they actually take the product to the market with people who have got the entrepreneurship orientation. So that, I think, is basically where we can look at it. But there are other challenges. Maybe in future rounds we can discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If audience got any questions, you can keep writing. You can send it to the dais here. And also, going forward, I'd like to request ma'am to dwell on the topic of university business incubators, because KSUM is got the international award as part of the UBI Global. When we contacted them, we got to know that KSUM stood first, not only just in India but also abroad. So I request ma'am to kindly, or any of the panelists, to dwell on that, how universities play that business enabler role, because today universities are not just universities, but we have technological business incubators with them. We have scientific incubation centers with them. So KSUM being number one in the world, I just request you to kindly say a few words on that.
So, one of the things that we are focusing on as far as the universities are concerned is, thankfully, a big chunk of our funds that we are allocating is now focused towards research and development. Unlike, our nation, which spends around 0.7% of its funds on research and development, Kerala has put, recently the finance department asked us, all the departments, as to how much you are spending on R&D. And surprisingly, we found that if one were to look at the economic review also, almost on the higher education, when we are spending around 4% of our GDP, around that, which is not that good but not that bad either, because the idea is to reach around 8% shortly. But a large chunk of it, almost 20% of it, goes off this 4% is now focused towards R&D. Well, one of the things that could happen is if one is like what Dr. Unikrishnan here mentioned, that it is very important that while we act, look at global scenario, but we have to act local, because Kerala has its own specific challenges, very different from the other states. So how it impacts on in terms of improving, say, healthcare, bringing in the universities could lead in researches, major researches in areas of education, in areas of agriculture, in areas of, so for instance, looking at agriculture, right from a farmer-based enterprise to an entrepreneurship to an agripreneur. So those kind of research which can happen either in our conventional universities or the agriculture universities. So there is a focus on how much you are able to translate this in terms of impact to the society. And as I said earlier, this big focus on the PDFs, because we feel that the postdoctoral fellows who are working with some of our startups can actually reap some result. The other thing is to look at global network examples, like you have pre-scouters which are looking at a collaboration, a smart collaboration between the industry, the academia, the startup, everyone together, and then trying and seeing, because one of the things that we are actually saying is it is important to raise the right questions, but it is more important to give the right answers. Very important that we look at it from that point of view, or even spin-outs, which the UK system has built in. Maybe when we have the risk fund, getting rolled out, then at some point of time, Kerala in 1 year or 2 years down the line can think of a la spin-outs like we have in the British environment.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Now I request Unikrishnan sir to talk about the center of excellencies that needs to be created, or the accelerators that has to be created, so that academia and industry connect for the startups would come in place. Your thoughts, sir?
Dr. Saji has raised a very important point on how to move to higher technology readiness levels for startups. And I think that's a very critical point of intervention where the government's role comes in, because this is what Triple Helix as a sort of classic model which has come up in Silicon Valley as well as in China, the most successful technology building up models which have happened in the world so far. So that is where, I mean, if you look at the whole process of building up the Silicon Valley, very few people realize the extent of amount that the American military and the American government has actually spent in terms of building up the Bay Area infrastructure, and also the contribution that the universities with a very liberal framework have actually contributed, be it the Cambridge or the MITs and Harvards, have actually contributed to the whole process of technology building and innovation. So, I mean, there is no shortcut. The shortcut, I mean, we have to actually build up the innovation ecosystem. And as Dr. Ishida also pointed out, this whole mechanism of integration between the academia, the industry, and the government, and also the focus has to be brought on areas which are extremely important to Kerala's development. That is how the whole thing can be structured. Now, one more specific issue here is that, okay, the R&D centers would have their specific focus areas, and quite often the critical aspects of the cutting edge issues cannot be handled by the existing R&D centers. So that is where we have to come into center of excellences, new center of excellences. Some of these have to come up in higher education institutions where there are innate strengths in certain areas where interdisciplinary research can be facilitated and centers of excellence can come up. Along with translation research, such sort of centers of excellences are also important. Now, I would suggest, now, as a part of the Government of Kerala program, we have come up with a number of Center of Excellences. We have come up with an electric vehicle Center of Excellence with bringing together the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, the Center for Development of Advanced Computing, and Titanium. And along with that, the Trust Park, so that we are targeting something like 60% of the electric vehicle subsystems can be manufactured within Kerala. We have made some strides. We have already come up with the engineering model of the lithium titanate batteries. We have to go quite a lot in this area forward. We have also come up with a center of excellence in a Center Kerala Genome Data Center, which is one of the first in the country where data for genome sequencing can be used for precision medicine, precision agriculture, precision livestock handling, precision fisheries, and also ecosystem preservation and making use of biodiversity productivity. Dr. Saji's Digital University team is also working as a part of that. Similarly, we are also coming up with a center of excellence in microbiome. RGCB is at the center stage of that. A center of excellence in nutraceuticals, where we are working with KSIDC also, and Institute of Virology is at the focus of that. We are working out a mechanism for that. So creating such center of excellences and also addressing the issues at the interface in the triple helix. These are extremely important, and we have to look at mechanisms for addressing the technology readiness level. And if you want to apply technology in the community, you have to look beyond that into community readiness level as well.
Thank you, sir. You rightly said that. And in fact, these Center of Excellences have to be really housed in universities or academic institutions. Recently in Andhra Pradesh also, with the support of the DOT, Department of Telecommunications, we got 5 COIs on 5G use cases. And Honorable PM Gar had launched one of the COI for South India in IIIT Kurnool, which is Design and Manufacturing Center upon recommendation from AP Innovation Society. So, sir had rightly said that. Now I request Dr. Saji sir to talk on corporate accelerators, because that is very much relevant. And these startups, if they have to survive, morning I was talking to ex-CEO Paneer Selvam Garu from T-Hub was here. He was dwelling on the subject that not just giving fund, but we should get work orders to the startups. Then only they can really survive. One of our startup which is working in defense sector, AP happens to be in the defense hub, and it got recently a work order of 4 crores from Eastern Naval Command. So again, a couple of other startups are working with other agencies, with the local bodies, as the co-panelists were telling before, that local problems have to be addressed. Likewise, now I request Dr. Saji sir to dwell on the topic of how these work orders can be related to the startups how industry can come into play, and this can be housed in academia actually. Please, sir.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to what I said earlier, and then is it how many of the unicorns have come out of academic incubators? And if you ask the same question, how many have come from corporate accelerators? You see a very big difference. Many of them who are actually successful are actually came from corporate accelerators. Now this is reverse in Western world. In fact, some of the good names which we know, like Meta or WhatsApp, or all of them actually came from academic ecosystem. So this is an issue. Actually, India, even the corporate accelerator is a much later concept, very recent concept, maybe 5 years, 6 years. The success rate of a corporate accelerator is far more than an academic incubator which is 40 years old. So we need to understand what is there. So one of the key thing is that they actually give a lot of access to the market. What an academic incubator does not give is not access to the market. Now, this is an area where we need to really try to address, because as we know, corporate accelerators have got a character that they actually concentrate on few cities. In fact, Kerala, when I was building the startup ecosystem here, and now Anup is doing, the biggest challenge we face, and I'm sure that this challenge is there in Andhra, sure, not Telangana, but Andhra. It may be there in Orissa, it is there in many other states. If you don't have a large number of non-linear industries in your state, they will not actually mentor an ecosystem, because they don't know how to mentor it. So this is a challenge we face. We have to actually do it by the government. Madam spoke about a lot of things government has done, because that's the only option we can do. Because if you look at Bangalore ecosystem is not grown by the government per se, it is grown by the industry. Hyderabad, it is grown by the industry. NCR region, again by the industry. Now, it is a best system to happen. Now, we need to see how we can actually take our own industries in our ecosystem. Aurangabad is an interesting example to look at there, where they actually started looking at seriously. There are some examples across the country. And then tell them that, see, you have successfully done it. You need to actually help startups to emerge on that. That is a tall call. And that is an area where India requires, if you really want an inclusive startup ecosystem, we need corporate accelerators in almost all small towns. When you say that Kurnool is going to have a COE, which if it is an industry which is going to drive it, that's a fantastic thing, because that's a way we need to actually, because very innovative products come from smaller towns, but there is no hand-holding support there, especially industry hand-holding support there. So maybe we need to start seriously looking at that as a mandate, that how do we create corporate accelerators. We are working with TIE on this in Kerala, and TIE has been very proactive of late, very nicely they are helping. So some of those aspects can actually make a big change, because just like academy is closer to this level, industry is more closer to the customer. So you will get more insights, and startups can actually make their product almost commercial day one ready as such. So that's my take on that.
Thank you, sir. You very well established the point, because a lot of innovations, corporate accelerators are the main, have a main role to play in India. It's a reverse in abroad. And likewise, since ma'am is here, ma'am, we had done one women entrepreneurship acceleration program in AP recently, where there's phenomenal success. And then there's one rural woman entrepreneur coming from very remote tribal area. She had come out with innovation called organic sanitary napkins. So we got her pitch we had a MOU with the European Economic Development Commission, and they immediately took her up idea and said, like, for a lot of third world countries, we are providing this kind of technology. If she is willing to do the technology transfer, we'll onboard her immediately. So likewise, since a lot of startups are here, I request you to kindly talk about women entrepreneurship a bit. Or otherwise, we'll ask for question and answers. Yeah.
I'm afraid we may have time only for 2 questions. So we'd like to open it up for the floor. If you would like to ask a question, please rise and raise your hand. A volunteer will come to you with a microphone. have volunteers in blue t-shirts. Please wave, please rise and raise your hands.
Good afternoon, sir, madam. Sir, myself, Mohammed Rais. Actually, I am founder of a startup named EduTechnicia, and I am parallelly doing my research at NIT Trichy. My question is, sir, what are the strategies we can implement in our university level or higher education policy level to ensure at least a TRL 7 in our research products? Because I am working in a research project at NIT Trichy for ISRO. So at least for that project, we are expecting TRL 7. So what kind of activities we can do in our university level, also in the higher education policy level to ensure that, sir?
I think one of the issues is that when we start doing the research, we actually never look at the final TRL 9 level where we need to reach. In fact, at DUK we work very closely with Oxford, and the process says that when he selects a problem, he will always think that this has to hit the market. It's not that most of his products will hit the market, but that's the intention in it. So you, even in your coursework, they start looking at things like design thinking, translation research, etc. There are frameworks which has been developed now. How do you take from TRL 3 to TRL 4, TRL 7, etc. One experiment Kerala government is doing is what we call as the science parks. And Digital Science Park is one of the early mover in that, but Digital University is doing. So where we actually very strongly encourage faculty to work with corporate industries or smaller startups to ensure that you do research jointly. It is not you make it and give it to them. Jointly you do the research. And we are very happy that several international startup companies have now come. At least 8 companies we have started in last 3 months from different part of the world, where faculty and the company jointly start looking at it. And PDFs and research students also working in this line as well. So the solution is at your course level itself, we need to actually have that thinking of going into along with publication, how do you do the patenting, how do you sweat the patents, these sort of things have to happen at the part of it. Second thing is, if your fund does not allow you to travel all the way to TRL 7, which is often the case, start identifying people who can help you to take it. So interact with the industry is another important element. Third is looking at these sort of research ecosystems. In Kerala, it's actually building a huge amount of research ecosystem. Because recently we were having a discussion under Niti Aayog across the country. I should say, madam, that you have actually leading really a strong research ecosystem we are creating, because the research parks, translation research centers, postdoctoral fellowships, the support to jointly do the research, I don't think too many places it is there. So that ecosystem can be leveraged also to take it to the next level. So these are some of my points on that. And in the policy level, industry policy today speaks about risk funding, Higher Education Council as well as Higher Education Department has managing that research fund for support. And we also introduced last time that if a researcher and a faculty or a faculty, if they wanted to go and spend in a matured ecosystem like US or other part of the world, if that partnering university removes a bench fee, the state will take care of your travel and accommodation for up to 6 months. I don't think any other state is doing that. So we need to actually start using some of these things to actually ensure that the innovation translate into high level of innovation, translate into entrepreneurship person.
Actually, to add to what Dr. Saji said, there are umpteen examples of startups, especially if you look at the agro-food processing industry in the KU as well as in the KVASU. But over and apart that, there are startups where, exactly like he said, these kind of opportunities being given. There is in the GEC, the Government Engineering College, Barton Hill, you would have known that they have something called the TLPC, a Translational Research Professional Leader Center, where they have this collaboration with the 8-5 dominant IITs, but where they have been able to translate research into action societal projects, also some for industrial use, completely with the assistance of government funds. Like he was saying, you encourage them to take 2 semesters. This has already happened. Exchange of credits has happened. And so what you do is you bring in expertise, learn it, and then transact it, translate it. So this has actually happened. And let me also tell you, the KAU has around 125 startups under a scheme called Raftar. So there are very exciting things happening. The ecosystem which the government has created around this is to be seen, to be believed. Yesterday when we were having meeting with the IIT Madras, they said that they have not been able to do a structural design for a bridge which is right now going to be constructed in Kerala, the name of which some of you know, but I would not like to reveal it at this point of time. It's a pleasant surprise which is going to come. That structural design for the bridge has come from an idea which was seeded in the TLPC with the help of government grants.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm afraid we may have to limit our Q&A session to that one. What an amazing conversation with so many pointers towards why it's important for academia and the industry to hold hands and march ahead in this journey together. Thank you once again.